as frequent as we once was. I guess I can share. Oh my god. Hi everyone, after a break of about 3 weeks, Saunan is now back with our 13th episode featuring just Mel and I because we do not have any guests for this week. But anyway, we were off for a while because we were busy with our internships, but that has now ended, so we hope to be recording more frequently again. So after talking about something more serious in the last episode with Serena about tuition fees, we are now going for something simpler this time, which is about comfort zones and vulnerabilities, however you'd like to phrase it. So let's get going with episode 13. So Mel, what can you tell us about comfort zones?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is really awkward because we haven't recorded like in a month, I think. So yeah. So I think comfort zones, I think it's different for different people. For me, I think getting out of my comfort zone would be doing something out of my routine or out of something that I'm comfortable with. And when I come out of my comfort zone, I think I'll feel more vulnerable, more like uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's probably the same for all of us. I think for me, like comfort zones is basically just as you said, me coming out and doing something that I usually will not do. And I think that one of the ways in which all of us have probably come out of our comfort zones is basically going to university. So what can you tell us about your experience in university? So when we go back to the UK this year, I mean, if we are all going back to UK this year, that's going to be our third year. So clearly, like going to university was definitely coming out of a comfort zone. So how did you feel when you first went to Sheffield? Like, how was that in a way of you sort of like starting to do things that you usually wouldn't do?
Yeah, I think it's quite timely to talk about this because I think it's exactly 2 years ago that we both started our first year, right, in September. So
Yep.
my experience going to the UK. So first of all, I've never lived apart from my parents before, and also secondly, I've never even been to the UK before that. So I think that was like one of the scariest. Oh, and also thirdly, I didn't know anyone who. I didn't have any friends who were going to the same uni as me. So I was basically going into a uni and going into a city that I completely knew no one. Like it's really like completely starting afresh. So for me it was really scary to the point where I think the whole process of applying to UK unis, getting your visa, flying there, because I flew there with my parents. So I think all of that was still okay because I feel like at that point it hadn't really hit me yet, like that I'll be studying in the UK, because it felt a bit like a holiday at first because I had my family with me, right? And then I think the moment it really hit me was when my parents dropped me off at my accommodation in Sheffield. And that was basically the last time I was gonna see them for like almost a year. And then at that point I was like okay, damn, like this is serious, like okay, so like I was sitting on my bed, I was crying, I was like, what in the world am I doing? Like I don't even know I don't even know how to, like, I've never lived apart from it, like legit in my head I was like, what in the world am I doing? Like I don't even know what I'm gonna eat for lunch tomorrow, and I think that I can like just be here in a foreign country without anyone, right? And then also because I had no friends, and then I only knew this one Malaysian Pei who like we met during the pre-departure briefing for Sheffield, right? So there was like only one person, and I didn't even know her. I only knew her as someone who wanted to go to Sheffield. And then at that night I was like showering, I was like, oh my god, what's going on? And then I was supposed to meet my friend, but then she said that she had other plans last minute because she was talking to a flatmate. Then I was like, oh my god, people are having friends. I don't know anyone. So at that point it was like, yeah, it was really scary lah. But yeah, I think that was the moment in my life where I really got out of my comfort zone. And I think it's the same for everyone, like not just people who went to the UK or went to another country. I think it's for everyone. Like like starting uni is scary, starting college is scary as well. So yeah, because it's just like going through different phases in your life, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was the case for me as well. I think, like, which is why I actually brought up university, because I think the scariest thing for me about university was actually like making friends all over again. Because I don't know if this was the same for you in Malaysia, but basically my primary school and my secondary school are really close to each other. So a lot of people from primary school actually went to the same secondary school as I did, and
Yeah,
so
same,
I've
same.
always had like this group of friends that I've known for more than 5 years in many instances. Like, the degree of closeness between all of us definitely varied according to years, according to like which form we were in and all that. But it's like you always know these people over there. So you're basically not that alone. And so me going to university is basically like starting all over again, like trying to speak to new people again on my own, because I've made many new friends while I was at secondary school as well, like from from primary school to secondary school. But the thing is that this is the biggest thing, which is that I never had to make friends on my own when I was in school, because the new friends that I become close to, or that I make, I often start those relationships with other existing friends. So it's like one group of friends making friends with another guy or another.
Okay.
You get what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
like the group always there, or the main group was always there. And this was how I actually stayed in my comfort zone, because like, let's forget like primary school and let's just talk about secondary school only, which is like 5 years. I've had this group of friends that I've known for 5 years, and we've basically like grown together, we matured together and all that, so we kind of like know everything about each other. And my mistake was that when I left secondary school for SPM to go to college, that should have been my first step in coming out of my comfort zone. But the thing is, when I was in college, I didn't really come off my comfort zone. Like, yeah, I did make like a couple of close friends while I was college as well, but not as many as I should have, because I could always just go back to my secondary school friends every Friday or every weekend. So that was the problem. But when I came to university, right, nobody that I was close to from my batch were going to Britain to study, and none of them were actually going to Sheffield as well. So I had to start all over again, and that was actually the biggest. That was actually one of the hardest things I had to go through. As ridiculous as it sounds, we should be more concerned about how we're going to progress in university for studies and all that. But for me, I was more concerned about friends, like until I arrived. And I think that some people in Sheffield that we probably know might have thought that Chris was a bit uptight when they first met him, because like he wasn't as easygoing as
Really, man?
knowing them. Yeah, I mean some people say that, like that's what one of our friends said. I'll tell you who he is later on. He met me at the pre-departure briefing at Sunway, and he was just like, this guy is like so like.
Oh,
Like,
okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah,
yeah, it was like so not chill. You get what I mean? But for me, it was just like I needed time to come out of my comfort zone to start to get to know new people and all that. So making friends, that was probably one of the biggest challenge that I had to go through. But I think that I've come out of that comfort zone already. I think I've made a relatively good number of new friends, close friends, and all that. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I think so. Getting to know new people, it might be like a very small thing, because we meet new people all the time. But I don't know if you get what I'm saying, which is that when you have to actually like start building relationships all over again,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
definitely difficult.
If I can add, right, I think that, I mean, personally, I think for me that was my biggest concern also going into uni. Like it wasn't like, oh, like am I gonna do well in my studies? It wasn't that. It was really like, will
Yeah.
I have friends? And I think that for me that was my concern, because I think for me I really prioritize like my friends, and I don't know how to say it. Like for me, I think I won't be happy if I don't have a community around me. If I don't have friends, I don't think I can be
Mhm.
happy. But then for some people, I don't think that's the case, because some people, they are okay with being alone. And yeah, for me it's like I don't like being alone. So for example, right, if like I was just telling Chris just now, like I hate
Mm.
eating alone. Like I really cannot eat alone. And I mean, I'm okay with eating alone if I'm alone. Like if I'm at home, right, then I'm fine with eating alone. In fact, I prefer eating alone if I'm at home. But then if I'm
Okay.
in a restaurant or if I'm in a like school cafeteria, right, I will never eat alone. Like, yeah, I mean, I I have some friends who feel that way as well, and they actually like during break time they sit in the toilet and eat. I don't know if you've heard that, but I
Are you
think
serious? People,
yeah,
what,
yeah,
they, oh my gosh, that's so disgusting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so disgusting. But
Yeah, I think it's quite common because I think some people like it's quite common to not want to eat alone. So I don't think I'll go to that extent like eating in the toilet. I think I'll probably just not eat, which is not a good thing as well. So yeah, so that's just one of
mm,
my things. I just cannot eat alone. How about you? Like, do you think that you prioritize your community? Like, do you think you're okay with like, for example, being in uni alone and doing your own stuff without friends?
yeah, before I start that, just not judging anyone who eats in the toilet. That was just what I said. That was just my first reaction. So I'm sorry if that offends anybody. I don't mean it, but okay. About eating alone, right? For me, like the thing is, no, actually, I don't have a problem eating alone. Um, if I were to go into a crowded place and eat on my own, I have no problems with that at all. At least that's what I think. But I think I'll get a bit like perhaps a little bit anxious or embarrassed if like one group of people I know walk into the restaurant and they see me eating alone. I'll just be like, ah
Oh
man,
my
that doesn't look.
gosh.
It looks like as if I'm a loner. But as a whole, I don't have a problem eating alone. Like I know people that they're very one of their comfort zones is basically having a very good social life, which is always having people around them to talk and meet and all that. I think that they basically need that like 5 times a week, like 5 days out of 5 days in a week. For me, I think it's lesser. I can go for like 2 weeks without socializing with anybody. But after that period of time, I think I'll start to feel a bit lonely. I'll need to find somebody. But so in terms of like eating alone, I I'm totally cool with eating alone. But I do get a bit embarrassed, I think, if a group of people just see me eating alone. Like basically a group of people I know see me
Yeah,
eating
yeah,
alone,
yeah.
then
Same, same.
it's not something that particularly bothers me though. But it doesn't feel good. Definitely it doesn't. Not at all.
Yeah. So talking about getting into new environments and eating alone, right? I think one more thing that scares me a lot is starting work at a new place. So for example, like internships, right?
Mhm,
So I I am terrified when I start internships because it's a new
mhm.
environment. I don't know anyone, and it's like so awkward because I'm probably like the only student there, the only intern. Um,
Yep.
yeah, but then internships, I think it's okay because I know like I know that if everything is horrible, right, that I'll be out of the place in like 2 or 3 months. But
Yep.
starting work, I think that would be really scary once I have to like start a proper job because if I don't like the place, right, I can't just leave immediately. Yeah, yeah. So that I think that was really scary for me starting my internship. Was it the same for you for internship?
Yeah, it was always like that. So I've had two internships now. My first one was before I went to Sheffield. That was actually a very scary thing, like starting it. So when I walked in, like again, like I was probably a bit like uptight, not so friendly. I suppose I don't know. It was a bit hard for people to. It was a bit hard for me to warm up to people I knew because one of the biggest problems that I have with internships is that I don't know what kind of relationship I'm supposed to have with the people there, my co-workers basically. I don't know what kind of relationship I'm supposed to have with my boss. Like, am I supposed to like treat him with like a lot of respect, like literally like a real boss? Like, obviously we're supposed to treat everybody with respect, but you get what I mean? It's like, if your boss, is it supposed to be like even more? Should you be like should it be a strictly formal relationship?
Mm.
And then with fellow interns, with fellow interns is probably like trying to make new friends again, and you don't know whether you should be treating them as friends or as co-workers. You get what I mean? So that's always my biggest fear in internships. And yeah, and I also worry about what people would actually think of me when I first joined. So that's actually quite boring. But in my experience for both internships, like within like 2 weeks of me being in there, I've established a very good relationship with my bosses. We've become friends to a certain extent, but to a certain extent, I mean, of course, there's a little bit of boundary over there when it comes to work, but outside of work, we're mostly like, I should say, kind of like friends. With fellow interns, like all my interns, all the fellow interns that I've had, actually, we've actually become quite good friends as well. But the thing is, like I said about being judged, right? One of the things that worries me is because, for example, like I think you were telling me just now about how in this place you're interning at right now, your boss is like a title of like doctor or something like
Yeah.
that. And you don't know whether you're supposed to call him like Dr. So and so, right? Or by his first name or his surname. And that was the case for me as well. Like in my latest internship that I just ended, like this is actually really funny because I thought that this guy, he's my boss, right? So I'm going to call him like Mr. So and so, like his surname, Mr. then his surname. So that was why I was calling him all the while. And he seemed to be like cool with it, like it's cool. He was a really nice boss. And then I became like good friends with the other intern over there. And finally she told me like, hey, like I think it's kind of weird that you're calling our boss like Mr. So and so. Like why are you so like it's weird lah. I feel like it's weird. Why you calling him? Just call him by his surname. I just thought about it. I was just like, actually, like if I were her also, I might think it's a bit weird, but I don't think I was wrong to call him Mr. though. But by the time she told me, I was already like 1 month into my internship. So back after that, I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to call him by his surname, and that's what I've been doing right now. So this is just one of the examples of how I'm worried about internships as well, because it's little things like that that set the first impression, because the other intern thought that I was actually probably like a very serious person, or just like that studious guy who's just going to do research all the way and not have friends because he's so like formal, Mister and all that. So that's why I'm worried about internships sometimes, because like I said, the first impression really matters.
Yeah. Actually, right, I think going into uni and going into college is so much easier than starting a new job, because in uni, right, everyone wants to make friends, like legit,
Yeah.
like especially in the start of the semester, like every corner you go, you find someone and then you ask like, oh, what's your name? So it's very easy because at that time everyone wants to make friends. But then in the office, right, it's like people are not there to make friends, and like when you just join, people there already know each other for like I don't know like how many years. So yeah, I think that was really hard for me as well in the office setting. And also I found it a lot harder to get close to my colleagues instead of friends in uni, right? For example, your friends in uni, like you can just like chill and ask about like their personal life. I mean, to get to know them better. But then, like for colleagues, right? It's like I feel weird like asking you like, oh, are you married? Like it's like such a weird question. But then like I don't know what else to ask. Like during lunchtime or something.
Yeah, I got you mean exactly. So every time like for both internships, right, the first meal out together, it's a bit like awkward. You get what I mean? So, and honestly, for me, like since we're talking about comfort zones or vulnerabilities, whatever we would like to call it, as for comfort zones, I think that one of the hardest ways for me to come out of my comfort zone is actually talking to new people. Like, which is why I think that I might be very extroverted to some people, but in some ways, I'm actually like I'm very comfortable with the people I know already. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, I'll make an effort to speak to new people, but that also takes a bit of an effort sometimes in that way. But what about you though? Like, so for somebody who has run for like society president, right? Like MASOC, for example, Malaysian and Singaporean society. Was that a way for you to come out of your comfort zone? Like, did that force you to come out of your comfort zone when you decided that you want to take up the job of like MASOC president?
Yeah, definitely. So previously, all of the positions that I've run for, like for example in school or in college, it's always an interview and like a few people making the decision. So I think that for me is less scary. But for when I ran for the position in MESOC, right, that was actually public voting. So like the members voted for you. So it's like I don't know, like close to 50 people or more than that voting for you, saying
Probably more
that
than that. Probably our year had more, I think.
Yeah. So it's like so many people voting for you and saying that, oh, like I want you or I don't want you. So that was really scary. And also for me, right, I think it was like public humiliation if let's say I didn't get the position. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to handle it well if I didn't get the position. I mean, I think I'll pretend that I'm okay, but deep down I'm like shit. So So I think that was really scary, and also because I was running for president, which is something I've never done before. I've never been the president before. I'm always like, the second in command or something. So yeah, I think that was really scary. Also because I was running against two seniors. So yeah, so that
I
was
remember that. Yeah.
definitely really, really scary. But I say that I came out of my comfort zone for that, but I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Probably not lah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something, like what you mentioned about voting and all that, right? So that is one of the places where I have not come out of my comfort zones. So, for someone doing my course or someone like me, like I'm definitely very intrigued in like elections and stuff like that, right? Like I can be very critical of people who are running. So when people who ran for like the MESOP president's position and all that, whatever position, like I did have many discussions about what they plan to do and all that. So you can be like critical in a good way, like evaluating your choices and all that. But I don't think it's something that I would ever dare to do while I'm still in university, at least, because first things first, like I have ran for elections before, but that like in high school. But basically, that was like so the only elected position that I got numerous times when I was in high school. Secondary school was basically like class monitor, so that was just an internal class election where, like, I mean, I kind of like expected to win already because first and foremost, like not many people were running for it, and second of all, like everyone's your friend over there, so like I don't think they'll have an issue with you becoming class monitor, right? And I mean, I don't think I was the best class monitor anyway, but that being said. But anyway, so running for like a position in look, the cat's behind me. Okay. Anyway, you can see his tail.
Yeah, the tail is sticking out.
Yeah. But okay, anyway, running for like a position in societies, right? That's something I wouldn't dare to do because first things first is I think I'm actually scared of I'm scared like my vulnerabilities will get exposed when I run. That's the first thing I think. I kind of like don't want my weaknesses to get exposed in a certain way. And second of all, I think I'm just worried about not winning. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's my worry.
Because like I'm not trying to make a sweeping statement or anything, but like it or not, right? In university, right? In many instances, when you run for position, I think your popularity or how known you are matters in a certain way in how the vote will tilt. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm always worried about that in the sense that, what if I'm not like known enough? What if I'm not popular enough? Or basically, what if people don't buy what I'm saying? Which is why that's my comfort zone. Like I'd rather just be an ordinary member of the society rather than run for anything. Which is why I think that I've got nominations to become one position during MESOP.
Yeah, you rejected it.
I can't remember. Yeah, I rejected it because these are the reasons why I rejected it. Like I'm not comfortable running for those positions yet. And the point that you made about second in command, like that's another comfort zone that I'm in. Like, I can be quite a critical person in a way, not in a bad way, but like I can question people's judgments and all that. And like, I don't know if this is just my ego or what, but I think that at times, how I question people, like even if I don't say it to them, when I think about it in my own head, I think that what I'm saying is justified or warranted. But the thing is, I'm quite comfortable being a second in command because I think that I'm kind of just very comfortable taking instructions from people when it comes to societies, as long as like people are not making me do something stupid, or if basically they are a good boss, they are a good leader, then I have no qualms taking instructions with that. And I think it's because I'm very comfortable, basically not having to bear most of the responsibilities. You get what I mean? It's like if you are the leader, right? If something goes wrong, the buck stops at you. You get what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But if you are like the second in command, like like you will be accountable for if anything goes wrong or whatever. But like I think the scale of it is not as severe. So that's in one of the ways where I've not come out of my comfort zone, which is basically I'm kind of like I find it very daunting to run for these positions as well. And perhaps I could be a bit lazy. But that's what people will determine.
I think coming out of comfort zones, right, I don't think it's a one-time thing as well. Like, for example, for me, right, just because I've ran for this position once, and just because I came out of my comfort zone that one time, doesn't mean I'm forever out of it. Like, I have to come out of my comfort zone again to do it again. Which like I said just now, I don't think I'll ever run for such a position again. So yeah, so I think it's definitely a process lah. It's not like a one time thing that like, oh, yeah, I'm out of my comfort zone, that I can do it again.
Definitely.
Like, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point, because like for people who have always like run for elections, be it in university, in societies, or even like in like real life, like politics and all that. I think that every like election, for example, like they might be doing it for like 10 times already, but they're probably still a bit afraid and uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because you can never tell how things are supposed to go. You get what I mean? Which is why I find it very uncomfortable at times, because I don't like uncertainties, basically, which is why I don't run for these things. So that's something that I'll probably have to work on. I have come out of my comfort zones in ways in which where I have participated in leadership roles in events and all that. But every time I'm supposed to start a new one, I get a bit anxious myself. It's just like MUN, when I was the Model United Nations for Sheffield. I was basically in one of the committees for the event, for the conference we were going to have. That was the first one. Like, that was very daunting to me. Then I kind of like did that pretty well. It went well. I was like, okay, that was good. And then when Sheffield Malaysian Games came out, I was a bit worried about that as well. So I think that, yeah, I think that in some cases you don't really come out of your comfort zones. It's always a process that starts all over again every time, I suppose. But obviously that varies according to individuals.
Yeah, I think, okay, so maybe now we can talk about Sound On, right? Do you think that creating this podcast channel was something like going out of your comfort zone?
For me, yeah, definitely. It was coming out of my comfort zone. Like, this podcast was really like coming out of my comfort zone, because which is why I think that when you ask me whether or not I want to be like, whether I want to join you to become like the co-founder, I think I took about a day or two to get back to you on it. Yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't like immediately like, yes, I want to do it. Because the thing is, I mean, this is me coming out of my comfort zone, because I don't know if you or any of the viewers would have noticed, is that whilst I might speak a lot, I might talk a lot when you guys see me and all that, I think that in many ways I don't express myself as freely as I would, especially online. So obviously with friends and all that, I express myself really freely. But the fact that I'm going to be recorded for what I'm saying, I think that was actually a bit concerning for me. I was a bit uncomfortable with that at the very beginning, because I was worried that people might pick up on what I say and stuff like that. But eventually, I just pushed myself a bit to basically say that, I want to be part of this, because I want to come off my comfort zone. I want to like basically talk more, speak more freely about things and all that. So yeah, I think that this podcast actually helped me come off my comfort zone, in the sense that I am now expressing myself a lot more freely. Because, for example, like even in classes and all that, when I have like group discussions and the like, I do express myself quite freely, but at the back of my head, I always wonder whether or not what I say might cause offense, or could it be misinterpreted or misconstrued. So I'm very careful what I say, which is why sometimes in class, like some of my classmates would probably say that I can be quite quiet in class discussions, because basically I'm worried about what I say. So I rather just think on my own rather than say it out. But this podcast has actually made me express myself more freely, because firstly, like, you are you're there, so I'm comfortable like speaking freely around you, for example. So I could express myself freely, but having them published was me coming on my comfort zone, because I can be quite. I think I'm noisy offline, but I'm quite quiet online. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I also question like, what will people think of what we're doing? You get what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Also, wait, before that, right? I think it's quite interesting because so you mentioned about how you don't speak out in class because you are scared of offending people, or scared you say the wrong thing. I think it's interesting because for me, I don't speak out in class because, okay, maybe that as well, but I think my fear of not speaking out is mostly the fear of people not wanting to listen. Yeah, like what if like for example, if I'm in a group and then I say something and then like people just ignore me. I think that is my fear, and that is why I don't usually speak up. But yeah, I think back to the podcast thing, right? I think this is very different because when I wanted to start it, which is why I asked Chris to join me, because I didn't want to do it alone, because I think doing it alone was really really scary. Because it's different from like MESOC, like running for a position in MESOC. It's like people know that that position is necessary and it has to be filled. But then for this podcast, right, it's like it's like it's not necessary. So I was afraid that people will be thinking like, oh, like what's the point? Like who wants to listen to you talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was what I was afraid of. And then like, oh, what if people don't tune in? So yeah, I think that was scary about starting this podcast.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, I think that's a very good point, because the fear of, like you mentioned earlier on, like the fear of not wanting, people not wanting to listen to you. I think that sometimes I do worry that, for example, like in this, like in the podcast, for example, like there might be things in which people might not necessarily be too interested in. So that was one of my concerns, in the sense that, like, what if we talk about this topic? Like, for example, like I think that the episode that we did with Akan, was about the one about love, right?
Love, yeah.
Yeah, that was one that was actually like really like, that was like really like, I was just like hitting my head about it. I was just, what am I going to say? Because that actually really made me like come out of my comfort zone, because like I don't talk about those things like in public.
Yeah.
I've spoken about it with you, with like close friends and all that. But like on the podcast, I was just like, for someone like me, like, what am I going to say? So that was me coming out of my comfort zone. I think that we did okay for that one. So I think that this podcast has in many ways actually helped us to come out of the comfort zone. Like, for example, like the topic that we did about like racism as well, like a lot of people probably wouldn't be too comfortable talking about that online, particularly in like a country like Malaysia, in which these kind of things is probably quite contentious. And I think that the fact that we actually discussed it was good, and we actually really did come off our comfort zone for that one. So yeah.
Yeah, and also I think also like controversial topics, like maybe the tuition fees. What if people think differently? I think among our friend circle, like among our social circle, like obviously people think the same way as us. But I think I was also quite scared of sharing it on like LinkedIn, for example, where my lecturers are actually there.
Right.
So I think it's more of these kind of like controversial topics that are a bit a bit scary to talk about. So yeah, also one more thing, right? I think that okay, so what do you think? Do you think that we are the least vulnerable at our age because we are young, right? And we don't have much to fear about. So for example, like so my mom always told me, right, that when she was in my age, she was very fearless. Like she could feel like she could do anything. But then she started to feel a lot more vulnerable when she started to build her own family, like getting married and having children, especially because there are so many things that are out of your control now that you really care about. Like for example, your children, right? You can't like control them, but your happiness like relies on your children. So it makes you become so vulnerable because your happiness is like expanded. It's not just coming from you yourself. Whereas for us now, when we are young, right, I think we are more like carefree.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with your point that I think I kind of agree with what your mom thinks, which is that what a lot of people would say, which is that we are probably the least vulnerable at our age. Like obviously, I think that all of us have different kinds of vulnerabilities. I don't think there's a need for us to go too deep into it, because everyone's vulnerabilities are probably different. But I think that we have a lot less to worry about to a certain extent at this age. I think we are more free to do whatever you want to do without much consequences on others except ourselves, probably. Because like, say, for example, like parents, for example, whatever decisions that they take, they'll have to like consider the impact on their kids and all that. So I think they're more vulnerable in that way. But I do think that actually, perhaps now in this age, young people are probably more vulnerable than our parents in a certain way, in the sense that I think like we have social media right now, right? And I think that a lot of people who have tried to like rise to the top, like basically people who are in their 20s or early 30s right now, especially in public life, they have become very vulnerable in the sense that because of like in the internet, social media, and all that, there are things that people can pick on right now. Basically, stupid things that you said online when you were a kid, and it starts to get taken out and all that. So I think that in that way, we're probably more vulnerable right now because people can actually have evidence to back up our weaknesses, if you got what I mean, especially if they are online. So I do think that we are not as vulnerable as older people because we are on our own for now. But I think that comparatively, if we live in different eras, so we might be more vulnerable because, like, I don't know if this is related or not, but then, so basically, some time ago, I think about a month or so ago, like Singapore had an election, and there was this very young opposition candidate. She won her seat. She won her seat in the election anyway, but basically, people started to dig out things that she said in the past on social media, and it's like she had to apologize for it, like, you know, I can't remember if she apologized for it or not, but then she basically said that she apologized if what she said had caused offense and all that. So in that way, I think we're more vulnerable. I mean, for example, like imagine if something we say over here right now, like it's over here, you get what I mean? And 10 years from now, somebody can take it out and say that, you know, this person said this in the past, you get what I mean? So we could be more vulnerable in that way. But I do agree, like on a whole, we're probably more free to do whatever you want. But of course, we do have to consider a lot of other factors as well.
Yeah. I think also about this, especially for famous people, right? It's like people like to dig up their past, and then the thing is like people also take things out of context. Like actually, yeah, like what you say is true. Like us recording this podcast now is potentially dangerous for our future because like we talk right, and then it's very easy to take things out of context, and then
correct.
Yeah, and then like I think a lot of like famous actors and YouTubers are like getting, I don't know, they call it getting cancelled as well because of maybe like a tweet that they posted 20 years ago or 10 years ago. I think have you heard of the Jenna Marbles incident?
No, actually. What's it about?
So basically, she made a video. She's like a famous YouTuber. She made a video many years ago. I think, okay, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think she was impersonating Nicki Minaj or something, and she had a tan, and she said that she said that the tan wasn't intentional, but people started to get really angry recently. And the thing is, the video was posted, for example, like 5 years ago. At that time, no one was sensitive about it, but then now because of the Black Lives Matter movement, or maybe people are just getting a lot more sensitive in general. So I think the internet is like a place where everyone, I think we talked about this in our previous episode, so it's like everyone has a voice. Everyone has a voice, right? And I don't know, sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it also can be a bad thing where everyone can say something and it doesn't even have to make sense, but as long as it makes noise, it gets people's attention. And I think that takes a toll on like especially like famous people.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is basically this. I think that obviously for like people have like purposely tanned themselves, did like blackface and stuff like that. Those acts actually like it's wrong, and people if they've done it in the past and it gets exposed, I think the best way that people can actually move on from it is basically like be genuinely apologetic about it. So in that regard, that like people should be apologetic about it and all that. But I do think that we are in this social media age, right? Like, you know, very likely for a lot of people, what they said in the past will be picked up on, like such as those incidences and all that. Like even the Prime Minister of like Canada was like, people published a picture of him and he was like 20 something, like basically purposely tanning himself at a party and all that. Like, so the point I'm trying to make is that we're more vulnerable in those regards because there are actually evidence about it and all that, especially with social media. But I think that we have to just I don't think we shouldn't be like bogged down with the fear that this is going to happen in the past, because I think that what's important is that like if ever somebody exposes something people do in the past, like we shouldn't just like sanitize our hands of it and say that, oh no, we didn't do it and stuff like that. Like if we made a mistake, we're just apologize for it, mean it. Like I think that your current actions probably matter more than your past, but it does make us a lot more vulnerable because the period in which that mistake that you made in the past is exposed, and now it's probably going to be it's going to have a lot of impact on people. So yeah, that's why we're more vulnerable. I think, like we can clear up the air about it later on, but the moment it first gets exposed, I think it's really bad. So in that regard, yeah, we're definitely a lot more vulnerable right now. The fact is that for example, I brought up like the idea of like the Prime Minister of Canada, for example, like there wasn't even social media back then. It was a picture. You get what I mean?
Mm.
It was a picture, and that already like exposed his weakness in that regard. Now we have like social media. It's like literally like it's recorded, So so in that regard, on the point that yeah, we're definitely more vulnerable, definitely. But I think that we shouldn't force ourselves not to come out of our comfort zones because we are worried of the ramifications in the future. I think that we all make mistakes, but we have to like judge for ourselves whether or not what we're doing right now is wrong. Yeah.
So I think what you are talking about is control. So maybe what people do to avoid vulnerability is they control things in their life. So for example, we were talking about social media, right? If we don't want people to take whatever we say online out of context, or if we don't want people to dig up whatever we say on social media, then we control whatever we say on social media. Or for example, if like we mentioned about parenting just now, if let's say the parent wants the best for the child, the parent ends up controlling the child and dictating
Correct.
what they do in their life. So I think people control things to avoid vulnerability, but the problem is that when we control too much, right, I think it defeats the purpose in the first place. Like I think we do need vulnerable moments to live our life, right? For example, okay, this is a cringe example, but I think it's a relevant example. Like for example, if you want to confess to someone, or if you want to say that you like this person, if you want to tell this person, you have to feel vulnerable to be able to say something like that, because you don't know if the person likes you back. But then if you control yourself to avoid this vulnerability, you end up not saying it, and then like you don't know, like what if the girl like likes you back, and you are missing all these opportunities in life if you keep controlling and holding back to avoid um vulnerability, like making the first move and all that. So yeah, so maybe before we end, right, maybe we can just bring up a bit about self-love as well. So do you think that people who um have self-love are less vulnerable? So for example, if let's say I entered uni with like a ton of self-love and I wouldn't be afraid of being alone, I don't know if I will feel as vulnerable. But I don't know. I don't know if it's like a linear relationship where you can say like one or another. But yeah, do you think that vulnerability can be reduced with self-love?
I think that yeah, definitely. I think vulnerabilities can be reduced with self love, definitely, because I think that a lot of problems that people have like internally, I think is very often as a result of like not loving yourself enough. I hope I could be wrong about this. I don't know, but I think that yeah, definitely. I think if people have more self love, they're probably less vulnerable. But that being said, like people who self-love themselves a lot, I think that in a certain way it's often sometimes like, for example, it's their ability to like nurse their own wounds on their own, if you get what I mean. But if someone just appears in like their life and is able to make them like feel like more loved and stuff like that, I think that's when they could become vulnerable as well. Because I think that, I mean, this happens in the movies all the time. Like this is probably a bit cringe as well, but there are very like many like strong-willed people, and then when they find someone in life, they're vulnerable. They just like let go of everything. You get what I mean? They
Yeah,
become vulnerable to that person. So I think that everybody is probably vulnerable in their own ways. It's just how vulnerable and whether or not it gets exposed or not. I don't know if this makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Probably everybody is vulnerable. Yeah, it's just probably a scale, I think, of how much and how they deal with it. But what you said is actually true. Like, I think that we shouldn't have to be too worried about controlling our thoughts and all that. Like, obviously, like if what you're saying is downright racist, then don't say it. Like control yourself in that regard. Like don't say it. Don't be stupid. But if there are a lot of other things in which you don't really have to be too concerned about. Like you don't have to control every single thing that you do out of fear of being judged, out of fear that it's going to be used against you. Because like I completely agree with your point that we need to have like vulnerable moments to actually live our lives. Because if we end up controlling ourselves, there are many things that we cannot do. But obviously, like I'm just going to like assert this again, like reiterate, which is that, but it really matters on. We have to be a bit intelligent with good judgment about these things, because if you're going to say something just like completely ludicrous, then just don't, because it's inflicting harm on yourself as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think vulnerability is like it's a part of life, and we shouldn't really like avoid it too much, because I think if you talk about emotions, right, maybe because I think emotions is linked to vulnerability a lot. So if we want to avoid vulnerability, we numb our emotions. But if we numb our emotions, yes, we avoid feeling sadness, but we also avoid feeling happiness, joy. Okay, I can't think of anything else, but yeah, I think you guys get what I mean. So yeah, I think it's more of like you have to feel everything, or not you'll feel nothing. So I think if you try to avoid vulnerability and going out of comfort zones, I think you end up being a robot lah. I think that shouldn't be the way. Yeah, because you by accepting that you can feel vulnerable at certain points in your life, I think that would end up opening a lot of doors in your life that you may like find happiness there. Oh my god, this and ended up being quite cringe, like more cringe than I expected. So yeah, so I think we've come to the end of this episode. Do you have anything else to say? Last words.
Nope. I hope everyone enjoys this episode, and for those in Sheffield, those who study in Sheffield, I hope to see you guys.